Welcome to the program.
Well, Sheila, thank you so much. You know, as we've just celebrated in the United States, the 4th of July, our whole Independence Day, I want to put people into remembrance of something. If you look at the country, when all of its inhabitants pretty much paid tribute to what our forefathers set up in this great country of ours with the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, obviously even going back to the Declaration of Independence, and the attack that's upon the foundations of the United States, upon all of our founding fathers, the slander, the total divorcing of this generation, let's just call it the tech generation, from historic reality, empiric reality, and history. I blame the public education because they have been used by the communist revolutionaries. You know this, that the goal was always to get a hold of a generation that within 40 years of that generation they could change the face of this nation. And I've noticed, and you can see it in the articles and everything, but people just don't seem to care anymore. And by the way, most of the 20-year-olds that 30-year-olds can't even explain what the 4th of July is all about. What we're talking now about is the virtual world versus the real world. And I'll call that empiric world. In order for Satan to control humanity that's fallen, he has to set up something totally in direct opposition to what the living God intended for us to experience. And I call that empiric reality. He's also had to destroy language and interfere with communication on a personal level. So many people, Sheila, don't even talk anymore, even to their spouses. They text them.
Yeah.
So all forms of continuity of thought have been and are being cut off. And so that's the great divorce, even beyond what C.S. Lewis was talking about. The implementation of the destruction of mankind is underway, and that's why I wrote Terminated, the End of Man is Here. The number one goal in everything that Satan has done is to destroy the image and likeness of God, mankind created after, after the judgment on the world that was before, that even the disciples talk about, the golden age, prior to the creation of Adam and Eve. But if you look at the plans of Satan with the fallen angels having sex with earth women, producing giants, you know, people say, why are you on this giant thing, Quayle? Because Jesus told us about the days of Noah, and they forget one word, corruption. So now we're going beyond the corruption, just sexual and the immorality and all of the demonic influence. We're going into the transhumanist movement, and we're going into singularity. In essence, the powers of darkness want the last vestiges of humanity wiped out. And Jesus, if you got a problem with what I'm saying, take it up with Jesus, because he said if the days weren't shortened, there'd be no flesh left alive. And Sheila, that's where we're at now.
Yes, agree. Well, you wrote Xenogenesis, you wrote Genetic Armageddon, now you throw in the mix Terminated. What you're laying out in these books here, really, Steve, especially Terminated, I've got it, haven't finished it yet, but this, folks, is the stuff of nightmares. Steve, you really lay out nicely the imminent destruction that really lies before us. We're at a really crucial precipice. And again, like you say in your book, Terminated, these murderous secret plans of Satan's minions, these Luciferian elite, their agenda is to do one thing: terminate us, period. And that's not a cutesy phrase, Steve.
No, and again, having been at this, Sheila, for, 25 years as a newsletter writer, probably 10 years before that, so 35. I've been at this half of my life. I'm 67 in August. But what I think is interesting, I made this statement, and I said, outside of writing about ancient history and ancient finds, I'm pretty much done. In other words, Terminated is a statement of finality. And what Tom Horn and I have done, and isn't it interesting, and I mean, I salute your programming. You had him on yesterday and me today, and what God is, people need to understand this. I don't talk to Tom and say, Tom, I'm writing a book called Terminated, the End of Man. He didn't write to me and tell me until after the book was written, milieu, and he and I talked about that, and he probably explained what the milieu was on your show the other day.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Yep. And so, we don't talk, yet God brings us together, and he will at Branson, the conference. We'll talk about that later, along with some of the great minds in transhumanism. The whole desire, the whole design is to make men God, independent of the God who created them, with no answerability or no responsibility to the former creation. Now, I'm saying that because I'm not going to write Terminated 2. To be continued was the last thing I put in my book, the last three words, I think. And the issue is simply this, that the headlines are happening so fast momentarily that I can't keep up with them anymore. And I believe based on Isaiah 46 that God says he is the Lord, declaring the end at the beginning, that I can follow suit. And that's what Jesus was doing in the book of Revelation, and obviously he's my example. We've got to tell the things that are, which will be coming, and the things that will be hereafter. There are three different time periods. So what I'm saying in a long-winded way is that we simply are at that point of termination, no flesh left alive, and the contempt that these people have for God, for Jesus, and for Christians is accelerating. So they are on their way to total terminal extinction, and unfortunately, Sheila, the churches don't believe this, they don't teach it, and they're not preparing the people of God to deal with if you will, what I would call techno-possession, when machines become demon-possessed. The first example of that would have been Talos, created in the time of the Greek gods, the Titans, the Olympians, and the follow-through of robotics, even through the film and cinema. Terminator, I think James Cameron did an amazing job of showing people Skynet. We now have Google. I've warned about Facebook. And ladies and gentlemen, now you understand why I'm calling it Faces of Death. You can hate me, you can hate the message, but you can't deny the fact that everything you have placed about your life on Facebook, for those of you who have, everything you've shared, your best friends, your entire network, your heart network, those people that you pour your heart out to, strangers are going over every single emotion you've displayed, every single word, and they're building, if you will, an artificial construct of you, and then they're running the artificial construct of you through massive programming on supercomputers. So in essence, Sheila, people are already being assassinated in a computer program to be carried out at some near point in the future. Do you think many people can even begin to embrace that thought?
No, not even close. And which is why, Steve, I find it interesting. You and I both featured an appendix in our books, the open letter that Tom Horn sent to leaders on transhumanism. He was so concerned and so alarmed by this dystopic trance, this mind-numbed slumber that the church seems to be in. It's like a mind-blinding spirit, Steve. But Tom wrote this open letter because I don't think that Christians are getting this at all. Transhumanism really is transitioning away from being human. I think when you step back and take a macro view, you think people are comprehending that one, Steve?
No, and unfortunately, you probably deal with it better than I do because I become cynical and jaded, which, by the way, is wrong. And I'm dealing with that on attitude. And I will say this: I'm going to get to write a book, and it won't be like anything else. It'll be kind of like Tears, and I'm not pitching it. It won't be available until December. But the Lord laid on my heart to write a book on Jesus like no other book that's ever been written. Now, that's a big claim.
Wow.
But I also got it instantly. And so, one of the things I really believe, Sheila, is that the reason there's so many lies that humanity is embracing, the lies that are being embraced by humanity are setting humanity up for the destruction. They forgot one person, Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life. Now, look, I make no apologies, and I thank God neither do you. The churches are responsible. Many of the famous, if you will, 150-year-old preachers would always say that if Christianity were to die in America, it would die because the pulpits are dead. That's my version. But the point being is that we're at now a total embrace by them who are claimants to Christianity of every foul and unclean spirit that has been able to deceive them because of one thing: they have denied the testimony of Jesus. Now, I can tell you this: if you're in seeker-friendly churches, everybody is welcome except Jesus. I was talking to a man the other day who I love. I won't use his name because, number one, it's irrelevant, but most people would know the name. And he basically said the same thing, and I met him. He's raised up to write a book on the warriors, godly warriors, men, first and foremost, to step up to the plate. But he was told by a missionary organization in South America, and here's they said, you've won more people to the Lord, the kids have turned around, the power of God is present, but you've got to leave. And he said, why do I have to leave? They said, point blank, because you talk about Jesus too much.
Unreal.
Yeah, and so I thank God for him. Jamie, God bless you, that's his first name. The fact that people are so... Now, remember, this is a Christian organization, a missionary organization. The guy and his wife are having the power of God, lives transformed for Jesus. Even those kids who have grown up are calling him, seeking out Jamie, saying, thank you for bringing us to Jesus. I know of no greater compliment. I know of no greater thanksgiving to give to the Lord when someone says, thank you for bringing me to Jesus.
Amazing, huh? Being kicked out of somewhere for talking about Jesus too much. Yeah, well, in a few days, my friend who was arrested in Canada for preaching the gospel is coming on. The scripture really clearly, Steve, presents Jesus as a rock of offense, a stumbling stone to all of those who reject his lordship. They stumble because they disobey the message. And boy, isn't that ubiquitous today. I mean, we offend people just by opening our mouths. And Paul says, what? I've become your enemy because I tell you the truth? People don't understand that are listening the amount of ugliness and nastiness that you have to deal with when you're called to be a watchman, when you're exposing the deeds of darkness. People cannot comprehend the absolute nastiness and the ugliness that we have to deal with. Let me ask you I think this is going to be a difficult question for you to answer because no one, Steve, looks at the amount of staggering headlines that you do. With all the headlines that you look at and with all the information that you've written and wrote about and chronicled, what in this whole entire transhuman /AI/robotics, the themes you've covered in Genetic Armageddon, Xenogenesis, and Terminated, what floors you the most about it?
That the oldest lie in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, ye shall be as gods, ye shall not surely die. The number 1 and 2 positions of the transhumanists, quoting Zoltan Isvan, which I do in my book, he said, at the heart of the matter, this paraphrasing, transhumanists want to live forever. When Ray Kurzweil wrote Singularity and when he wrote The Age of Spiritual Machines, and I would tell anyone this, and Sheila, I got this just the other day, because I've written about spirituality, I've written about, obviously, technology, but I want everyone to ponder this and take it to the Lord in prayer. He said, Steve, you cannot separate technology from spirituality.
Wow.
Sheila, I just was awed. I delight in it, but he blows my mind with simple words. And what that simply means, if you go to the book of Enoch, and there are people challenging Tom Horn and I, nobody's telling us to defend our position. They hate the book of Enoch. The book of Enoch was in the Old Testament, still in the Ethiopian scriptures, It was removed. I'm not saying all the pseudepigraphal works are anointed, but the book of Enoch, the book of Giants, where they were found in the different caves of Qumran, the Qumran scrolls, and there are people that challenge everything. Jesus quoted a powerful statement, lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me to do thy will. What volume of books? What's he talking about? So the early church fathers accepted this. So what you're looking at, I want to dissect that statement. You cannot separate technology from spirituality. You go into the book of Enoch and you see point blank that all technology and the advanced technology was given by fallen angels. So I watch and I look and I learn. Robotics already handled, 250 years before the birth of Jesus, already dealt with. Artificial life forms. By the way, that's what the Colossus of Rhodes was really. It was the literal statue of Talos, T-A-L-O-S, the giant that was given, quote, life by the creator of Zeus. And Zeus is not Jesus. The name Jesus, Yeshua, existed before Zeus ever came on the scene. The idea simply is that the technology we now see today, how did Francis Bacon know that we'd be dealing with robots? So see, the secret societies, and here's what's key. Oh, Lord, help me to make this clear. Secret societies believe, whether they're the Masons, the Rosicrucians, the Tool Society, they believe they are saved through gnosis. Gnosis is the Greek word for Gnostic. And so that means that when you get secret knowledge, you become part of this elite that somehow rules the planet and has eternal life apart from God. You can be as perverted puppy as you want, and God forbid, and literally spare the poor animals, because the same things that took place prior to the creation of Adam and Eve, if people want to go look at this, they need to look up. There's a war about that. Sure, I believe the earth as created is recreated in Genesis 1:1-1-2. That's only 6,000 years ago. But prior to that, there was an angelic creation on this planet that went back hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions, and that's the golden age of man. They call it the golden age of man. It should be just called the golden age of fallen angels. Let me correct what I said there. And so why is all this important? Because, Sheila, I've been told by very high-ranking members of the military and intelligence community that the total goal is to get the same weaponry that the ancients used. And I said, well, hey, it failed for them. What makes them think that it's going to succeed? To make war against God and his angels. See, it's not just us. There's a war going on in heaven. And that war on heaven now is transferring to earth. And we're seeing new categories of evil spirits. We're seeing new principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness on earthly places. A spiritual war waged on our physical plane. I would guess Ephesians 6, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness, rulers of this present darkness, I'm just paraphrasing, is related to the very war on earth that we're now experiencing and the perversion on earth, where every boundary, and here's the key, every God-loving boundary that he created for the benefit of his creation is being distorted and destroyed in order to bring about the end of mankind. So that's why I say terminated the end of man. If I might, I think people need to understand something. I know there are those who call me a doom porn purveyor, all this stuff, but I think people are going to be surprised in, and I'd encourage you to read the last chapter of my book, because I've never gone into the detail I went into about my calling. I didn't pick up the mantle of a watchman. No way. I didn't even know what one was. I didn't pick up a ministry of Joseph. No way. I don't know any of this stuff until Jesus got a hold of my life, literally in the flesh, in a physical appearance before me, and he baptized me in his Holy Spirit. Now, people say I'm a bloody liar. They say I'm an effing liar. Sorry, but let's just be blunt. They call me every name in the book. They speak evil against me at everything. People say, you don't need to be defensive. No, I'm telling you this. Look beyond. Look beyond the slander, look beyond the ridicule, and look to a track record. I could not have known this. It is nothing that a man could have known that many years ago, in my case, 46 years ago, and then until last year, Sheila, I didn't release a lot of things that the Lord had told me, 4.5 decades ago, and I still can't release some things, and I find it's interesting. Now I understand. A time period has to exist wherein the context of his revelation can stand against the events of the day and also the technology of the day. Come on, let's face it. Do you think people accepted when I was talking about genetic Armageddon years ago, I think, 15, 18 years ago, that robots would be having sex and men would be abandoning women? And someone says, well, I think you talk about sex too much. Oh, yeah? That's what lured the fallen angels out of heaven that kept not their first estate. And to set the record straight, when Jesus said they are neither given or taken in marriage, but are as the angels in heaven, that's in heaven. That doesn't have anything to do with earth. So herein lies the problem. The church that Tom wrote his open letter to, and I just give you kudos for also including it in your book, is that it is the heartfelt revelation by what I believe in. Look, Tom's my friend, but I want to share something. In my opinion, he is one of the brightest, most articulate men in the world, okay? And for the record, at Branson, Sheila, he will be the last speaker. And, it's important because what I believe Branson, the Transhumanism and Hybrid Age Conference, is all about, and I'm going to go on record as saying this, after September, I don't know the time period, is it 1 month or 2 months? All hell is going to break loose in the transhumanism, hybrid, demonic infiltration manifestation on Earth, where the machines, the robots, everything that you know as AI, we know as AI, it's going to start becoming more predominant and preeminent in lives. And you think Alexa's bad, imagine what's going to be prominent. Now, here's why I believe I can make that statement. We now live in the context of time in which people can't embrace things they just blew off as that's too far out. Well, now the too far out is brought literally to where most people live within. And so that conference is so specific. And the reason it's relevant, now I say these conferences are different than every other person's conference, is because we are focusing on what those of us who are praying, seeking, and being prompted of the Lord to draw attention to are trying to equip the saints for the days ahead. And if God's called some of us to be teachers, some of us to be, as Pastor Langford, an evangelist, obviously pastor, teacher, a God-called man. Tom Horn raised up for such a time as this. Timothy Alberino is talking about the interference and the relationship between flying saucers, the technology, the abductions, all that stuff. We've got Richard Dolan, who's the world's expert on off-planet events taking place. Everybody doesn't believe in off-planet civilizations. I never had so much flack before when I start talking about stargates, etc. Even though technology has already achieved that, we're seeing the events unfold. We're bringing Hugo de Garis from China at great expense, who basically is talking about gigadeath. Now, this is one of the artificial brain creators' top 3 guys. Yeah. And he said, I'm moving from atheist to agnostic. And he's worried about gigadeath. There's Terrans and Cosmos. And if you want to go up and read about Hugo, it was a blessing to have him. And so we're not just bringing in the same old voices. We're bringing in new voices, but some of us have been ahead of the new voices for decades. But in order to take it out of that, well, that's just a Christian perspective. It has nothing to do with that. It's a matter of life and death. So ladies and gentlemen, please go and sign up. GENSIX.com for live streaming for the Branson Conference. And I think we've got 300 seats left at Branson. We're still months away. So if you can't attend, you can go on Gen6, GENSIX.com's website, and sign up for it. And it's going to be so unusual. People claim that it was the best conference they ever attended last year, and this one's even going to be wild, Sheila. We have Mark Patrick, who's literally formed a 13-foot giant based on Buffalo Bill Cody's being dictated to by the Native Americans, the story of what's on my True Legends book of the giants that were so big they grab buffaloes under their arms, run at 40 miles an hour, and basically eat the buffalo on the run, wow. Just ripping them apart. So why is this critical? Because that DNA of those giants is the most sought-after commodity, along with the ancient flying machines, the ancient technology, in order to incorporate it into the beasts that we're going to be dealing with as Christians. And, we're seeing now the acceleration of technology. Even on the front page of Matt Drudge today, they're talking about extinct rhinoceros. Well, I dealt with the extinction level stuff coming back, 18 years ago. People will accept that the mammoths can be reconstituted, even dinosaurs can be reconstituted, but they can't accept the concept that they are already destined for termination. And now I'll blow your mind, Sheila. I've never said this before. Can any of you on Facebook imagine meeting your own virtual entity that has been cloned that's exactly like you without the human spirit, but your mannerisms and everything? I don't think 1 in a million people can embrace that, yet that's where we're headed. We talk about replacement theology. We better be talking about replacement humanity.